Welcome to the Red Diamond Report podcast. I'm your host, Wilton Jackson, and today we have another great episode for you. I have a young lady by the name of Kelsey Nicole Nelson. If you don't know her, ladies and gentlemen, you need to follow her because it is magnificent. She knows everything in my eyes. Like we go back from like college, like
Way back.
NWJ. Like Kelsey, it is so good to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me. Your family. So you already know, like, I'm excited and delighted to be on here. I'm just so proud of you and the great work that you continue to do. So thanks for having me. And I'm looking forward to having fun with you today.
Absolutely, likewise. And so, Kelsey, before we get started, tell the listeners a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, of course. So I am Kelsey Nicole Nelson, aka KNN, as everyone likes to call me. I am based in our beautiful nation's capital of Washington, D.C., where I do a little bit of everything, but mostly freelance for television and radio. So I've been working now with NBC Sports and Peacock on Brother from Another, which has been so fun covering sports at the national level, doing baseball coverage with MLBBro.com, and then mostly with my main work, working with Fox Sports, which has been a blast. And then also people know my work from Bally's. And then I sit on a couple boards, which keeps me very busy. So making sure basically that we're giving back to our young people, investing for our young people, capstone advisor as well at Georgetown and in the education space and really kind of youth space, also serving as director of communications for the National Foster Youth Institute. So I don't do much, Wilton. Somehow I just keep busy, but all great things, that I'm very passionate about doing. I'm just, blessed that God has afforded me to be able to use my talents and skills in so many various and different ways.
It's like, how do you manage it all? Like, how do you do it? That's also a question that I often get. Like, Wilson, how do you manage?
Like, how are you managing everything? And it's the best question. And Wilton, I don't know if I ever have the great answer for it. Like somehow, some way, I think I was blessed with good time management skills. And that's so important because, I'm not into, quality. I'm not into quantity of jobs. I'm into the quality of jobs. And I like to think that I keep getting opportunities because, I'm a perfectionist and I like to do things and do it to the best of my abilities and give 150%. If you can't tell already, I'm a very high energy person. So that also helps to keep me going and keep me driving to do so many different things. But, I think it's just because, when I'm passionate about something, like I go the longest mile for it. I go beyond the yard for it. And I think that's what it is. My passion has fueled me and drove me. It's the thing that keeps me up at night when I'm not finished an assignment or task. It's also the thing that gets me up early in the morning when I know I need to finish an assignment or task. But I truly do think, people make time for what they want to make time for. And for me, it's just, being, and also I think I've had an amazing and supportive, cast. Like luckily in all my gigs and all my jobs, people that understand all the different things that I do and they're supportive of that, but they also stay on me, to make sure I get my stuff done. And it's very important to have great leaders around you, great allies, advocates, mentors, and supporters. And I just think because I've had so many great people around me as well that enable me to do this work, that help me, motivate me at times too. When I have those days where I'm like, whoo, like this is a lot, I need a break. So I think just also having a great supporting cast.
You talk about that energy. Like when you look at the different roles and the things that you do, which one would you say you're the most passionate about?
Yeah, it's so hard to pick just one, and I'll be honest with you, because I think for me, giving back to the community and the sports aspect have been part of me since, I could talk. Like I've always loved sports. I've always, been that sports girl that, wasn't afraid to play with the guys or talk smack with the guys, when it came to sports. But I've also been that person that's always been giving back to the community, starting with my family, from an early age, picking up trash in the communities, reading to kids, volunteering for class trips and things like that. So I think for me, honestly, it's both things. And that's why I think I've been able to balance. And I think that's kind of why now I'm going through this rebrand of people knowing me so much more than just sports and really trying to use my purpose on my platform and showing that I have a wide platform, that we don't have to just be placed into this box. I think for me, it's equally passionate, my sports, as well as kind of my giving back and working with young people. I'm so blessed to be in a sense where each day I get to cover sports and watch sports and talk sports. But I also right now in my new role, get to uplift foster youth voices. And I think that's a population that has for too long, not been heard enough and needs to be given the agency to be heard on a bigger level.
And you mentioned something in all of that when you said being able to merge your purposes together. And we're going to get into a little bit about that towards the end of the show, because it's not every day that everybody can say, I do something and I feel like it's my purpose versus like I'm doing a job. I may like the job, but it may not be.
Right. Is it your purpose? Yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to get into that a little bit more later on into the show. But I want to ask this. You played basketball growing up.
I did.
So you've been a fan of the DMV. You're a DMV girl at heart.
Oh my gosh, yes.
All of the interesting things that are going on with DC sports these days. I want to
Ooh,
ask this
Wilton,
first
I've
question.
been busy.
Exactly. Before we get into that though, like, what made you most interested in playing basketball?
Oh my gosh. Well, I'll be honest with you. I have loved basketball for a long time. If you grew up in the DC area, you grew up doing, especially when I grew up, I'm a 90s kid. You
Yeah.
grew up, when Hoya Paranoia was at an all-time high. So I grew up, going to Georgetown basketball games. We get free tickets when I was at Plumgar Recreation Center or, the Boys and Girls Club. I'm a Boys and Girls Club kid. And we go to basketball games. So you're watching Georgetown, you're watching Maryland. This is when Maryland basketball too was at an all-time high. So
Absolutely.
watching just basketball at a highest level. And then, also, I grew up in the Mystics era, watching Coco Miller, Elena Beard, even though I was in the nosebleed seats, I was watching the Mystics, at a top level, which was amazing and great. And same thing with the Wizards, the Agent, Zero era, Gilbert Arenas era,
Yes.
Caron Butler, Antoine Jameson era. So seeing just so much great basketball. And for people that don't know this, maybe some people just got introduced to basketball in the DMV through Kevin Durant, something in the water. But, the DMV, like, it's a commander's town, like Commanders, burgundy and gold rules, but we have such strong basketball roots and talents. Like, if you go to a high school basketball game here, like, you talk smack, like, it's a thing. Rivalries are real here. And basketball has been long and bred it. And it probably helped that I was super tall growing up as well. So, when you're the tall girl, people are going to always pull you,
right,
into different sports. But a lot of it was just going to sports games, with my dad. And basketball just always drew me in, the athleticism of these athletes. I could never dunk, but watching people dunk, was super amazing. And then just the game of basketball, I feel like it's a love language. It tells a story, all the team members kind of playing their part and role, even the, the role players on the bench as well, being able to step in when needed. But I think I just grew up in this basketball culture in the DMV. It's still here. It's why we love seeing, and I'm going to say Baltimore and DMV. We love seeing girls like, Angel Reese and, there's so much, Jordan Hawkins and what just happened,
absolutely.
with that. Like, there's so much great basketball talent, that comes from here. So many pros. That's why, one of the things I'm most proud about now is sitting on the Montgomery County Sports Hall of Fame board and being able to get some of those great basketball players the highest recognition. So I think for me, honestly, it happened to be where I grew up, Wilton. This is a basketball place. Like, if you're a sports fan, you have to love basketball. One of the first TV shows I did, the Round Ball Report on CTV, it was great to be able to speak to the love of basketball that I had and cover basketball at the top level. So I guess the basketball has always spoke to me. It always drew me in. And now it's obviously one of the favorite sports I love to cover.
And as someone who grew up playing basketball and like you said, you've had the opportunity to watch and cover the Mystics, where do you see the game, like more so the WNBA going, moving forward?
Yeah, I think the WNBA is moving in the right direction. And I think the conversation that's being had is one that needs to be had, talking about expansion, right? Whether that be franchise expansion or roster expansion. Because I think we can all go back to the draft and after the draft and seeing the players that got cut and just saying, like, these girls need a home. Like, these girls need a home. They should be able to play here in the U.S. They should have more options, right? And I think that's where the WNBA is. And I think we see more sponsors and investors, getting into the game. I think we see more of their male counterparts helping to also promote and grow the game. But I think people are now just kind of seeing the value. And I think the WNBA, too, as we look at the future, I think they're going to hopefully learn better, too, how to take and market these collegiate players and put them on a pro level. Because I think the NIL, Wilton, has changed the game. Like, now that these players can make money in college and make money. Shout out to Angel Reese making that money, Bayou
Like,
Barbie money.
Her valuation is like 1.6 million.
Isn't that crazy? So making more already than she could make in the pro level, like, essentially.
Right.
So I think the WNBA is going to have to see, like, how do you now stay attractive to these athletes and players, but also how do you take their marketability and grow it over to the game? I think a good case study before was Skylar Diggins Smith now. I think she had such a high value pre-NIL for college. I think she was able to take some of her college fan base to the WNBA. But I think, again, now it's just on a different level because of how much these athletes can make in college. So I think the WNBA, I think expansion is there. I think more people knowing the value, some more advertisers and sponsor dollars are there. And I also think even just with draft coverage, expanding that, and finding ways to improve that and kind of making that, something that everybody just wants to watch and be down for, I think is going to be huge. And then also, I think just more of these teams making their own homes. We know what's happening with the Chicago Sky now. The Mystics obviously have theirs with the Entertainment and Sports Arena, Las Vegas, and that beautiful facility that they did for the team. Like, I think that's also going to be like really investing and making sure that they have a place of their own. I think that's also going to be kind of the next level for these WNBA teams. But honestly, it's exciting. It's almost a good problem to have because I think they only have up to go and, they can work on it. But I think the timeline part is going to be the interesting part. Well, and how fast can they move on these deliverables? You got to go while things are hot. WNBA is hot right now. Women's college basketball is hot right now. Every time I see those long lines for Caitlin Clark, I get excited. I get goosebumps. So how do you build on that quickly and act quickly, kind of while the going's good and the going's hot?
This is another perfect segue.
Yeah.
We have to talk about the Wizards.
Ooh, so much happening with the Wizards. They've had us busy, Wilton, here in DC.
I when I saw the news, I kind of predicted, obviously, Bradley Beal would, be on his way out.
Yeah.
But I didn't think that we would be looking in that particular deal to see the Wizards not get any first round picks.
Yeah, it was a bunch of picks, but maybe not the picks that you wanted. I think, first off, let me just say, like, DC fans, we're still getting used to this new era of Wizards basketball. Because I think what people don't understand, for so long, we've had a guy be able to lead this team. For a long time, it was Gilbert Arenas. I'm going to talk about my era. Then it was John Wall's team, right? He brought the Dougie to DC in great basketball. Then it was handed off to Bradley Beal. So that torture baton has always been handed off. Where now, all of a sudden, right, it's blown up what we know as DMV basketball. And, for a while before Jordan Poole came, there was a lot of new faces and guys that basketball fans were trying to be like, well, who is going to be that leader? And I think people have to remember too, like Wizards fans, they've gotten used to mediocrity, right? Mediocrity in DC. Like, you knew what the Wizards were going to do. They're going to be that middle of the pack team, maybe make a playoff, not go far in the playoff. Yeah. So we've always known what to expect, right, with Wizards basketball. And I'm old enough to remember that foot on the line Wizards team that should have went further. This is when Paul Pierce was here.
Yep.
I will digress. But all that to say, I think now all of a sudden too, the Wizards have been going international, right? Like, it started kind of with Denny Avia, and he's kind of being a guy now that's being propelled right on a new level because of all the changes that this Wizards organization has seen. Bradley Beal going out to Phoenix, Kristaps Porzingis going out to the Boston Celtics. Kyle Kuzma, everybody having questions about as we look forward. So all that to say, I think then we bring in Bilal Coulibaly, who is this French player that Wizards fans are still trying to learn about. I think he's someone that said Mikal Bridges is someone he models his game after. Someone who speaks 3 languages, learning a 4th, where his family's from in Mali. Like, this is a guy we're all getting used to, right. And I think also you have to remember Wizards fans too thought about the last draft and Johnny Davis and that kind of not going according to plans.
Right. I feel like a lot of people felt like that was going to be different.
We did. Yeah. Your first round pick is supposed to, bring you a lot more, but he's had a guy, let's be honest, he's had growing pains, right? And the NBA, right? Like, had to go to the G League, and towards the end of the season, he had some spurts, right? Some better offensive play. I think that's the biggest thing with Johnny Davis on the defensive side. I think, he's going to give you something, but offensively, he needs to improve his game, improve his shot, and especially from behind the arc, that 3-point ball. Going to need him to improve that. Corey Kispert. There's so many guys here. I think, that if you're a Wizards fan, you don't kind of have the flash. Like, Jordan Poole really will get to be the guy here in DC. And I think people knew there was a lot going on with Draymond and Jordan Poole. Didn't take a genius to figure that out. But, him landing in DC and the short stint that Chris Paul had in DC, even though we knew that wasn't going to go anywhere, basically it's a whole new identity, Wilton, for this Washington Wizards team that I think people are going to have to get used to. And then Wizards fans are going to have to get to know what a rebuild is.
Do you think with this rebuild, is this, if you had to gauge, because like I said, you see a lot of different reports and you're someone who's closely connected to the team, the area.
Yeah.
Was this what fans really wanted? Like when the franchise decided to move on with Bradley Beal, is this what they truly wanted?
Yeah, I think, let me tell you, the fans loved Bradley Beal, like for his basketball play on the court, though they wish they would have been healthier more because the injury bug did hit Bradley Beal quite a few times. Right. But they also love what he did in the community. Brad's a guy that has done so much for DC. So did John Wall. Like, I think that's why players, I think that's why DC gets so attached to folks because, both these guys, John Wall and Bradley Beal, Community Assist Award winners. These are guys that have given back to the community at the highest levels and in sections of the city that are sometimes neglected. And so what I mean is usually the most diverse parts of the city in a gentrified city, like they're actually paying attention to and giving back to, which I think means a lot to people who are actually from this area, the natives of this area. But I think, I think with Bradley Beal, people had questions because, again, they knew it would be the same look Wizards. That's why I said we've gotten used to mediocrity. I always say this. It's very hard to find true hardcore Wizards fans. Most of the time you can travel the country, you find hardcore Lakers fans, but it's hard to find hardcore Wizards fans. And that's because, what have they really been able to cheer for? Like all of the glory that comes from the Wizards, you hear a lot of our great OGs talk about the Bullets days, but you have a whole new generation, who didn't get to witness the Bullets days firsthand. Right. That was a whole different location, and everything else. So I think all in all to say, I think Wizards fans, they knew Bradley had to be moved. They knew his contract was a hard moving piece and the no trade clause. But I think they thought what would come back as a superstar that's something fans have talked about in DC, a superstar. So I'll be honest with you, Wilton. So many fans want KD to come home. He's not coming home anytime soon. KD's trying to win championship first, right? I said the only time he's going to come home is maybe towards the tail end of his career. Right. Maybe he'll give DC like a year or so. But Wizards fans have really wanted a big name here, right? Someone that they can really get behind. Because what usually happens in DC is when we do get big names, it is when guys are on the tail end of their career. But they wanted somebody more in their prime that could really build this team. Because what happened was last year, Wizards fans thought they had the right big three in Kristaps Porzingis, Kyle Kuzma, and Bradley Beal. But what did it result in? No playoffs, Wilton. What happened? But again, and this is when Kristaps Porzingis had a career year, right? In
Washington. One of his best years.
One of his best years. I think he wrote a new narrative for himself. He kind of forgot the Knicks days, forgot what happened in Dallas. He was able to create a new identity here in DC. Then you have Kyle Kuzma, another guy who I think also under the radar, but also had a career year here in DC. And then Brad leaves, as one of the franchise leaders in so many categories. So on paper, you would think those big three would be able to do something. The health aspect played a part, though, because the best availability is availability, and the injuries hurt the Wizards last year in that. And then also just the consistency, right? Of that. I think the Wizards not having a consistently reliable bench and, so many other factors. And then, of course, that's why they had to get a new front office. But all in all, I think the Bradley Beal trade was still surprising to your point because of what they got back. I think Wizards fans just thought they could get, just something more back in turn. And then I think the Wizards fans, too, don't trust this team with draft picks because the Wizards draft picks, as of late, kind of haven't been
Can't you blame them?
That's what I'm saying. So I think the Wizards fans are like, they're doing this well, and this is what everybody's doing right now in DC. They're scratching their head. They're going like, I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's going to be next. But I also think they're glad that something finally happened because they knew they couldn't continue on, right? It's like that relationship that you've been in where there's no excitement. You kind of know what to expect. You're just kind of complacent. And that's what Wizards fans have been. They've been complacent. But now all of a sudden they're trying to get used to this new thing that happened. And they're trying to see if it's something that they can believe in.
So from the Wizards to the Commanders.
Yeah.
Do you think that Sam Howell is worthy of QB1?
Okay, so I have a small sample size of Sam Howell, right? We didn't get to see him a lot in the regular season. When we did see him, let's remember he wasn't playing, kind of some of the top starters, right? That would usually play in games. So all I have to say, I know he did great things in college. I erase your college stats because college is college. You're playing with grown men now, right? Like it's a different breed of football. And I'll be honest, DC is a hard place to play. Like Carson Wentz learned that the hard way. They'll love you or you'll get a lot of shade, right? Thrown your way. And, this is a team that had loved, Taylor Heineke for so long, obviously wishing Taylor Heineke the best and doing good things in Atlanta. But I think this is a team that also has had a love-hate relationship with the quarterbacks. I think the last loved quarterback here, Wilton, was RG3. And that was a long time removed. And, we still remember that gruesome injury that forever changed the course of his career. So all that to say, I think, Sam Howell, I think fans are giving him a grace where they want him to do well. Like, I think fans are genuinely behind Sam Howell. Like, he's liked. He is liked here. People want to support him, but he's going to have to prove himself. You think about Jacoby Brissett, a journeyman, a veteran, who also still has potentially a chance, right, to have a starting
role. And he's proven himself in different years as well.
Of course, yeah, he's had some high of highs. I think all that to say, like, fans are like, okay, Sam Howell, we're going to give you a chance, but if you can't do the job, give it to the next man. Give it to the next man up. Again, Carson Wentz learned that the hard way. But that's the place Washington is in. Like, you have a guy like Terry McLaurin who people want you to feed. Terry's hungry. He's thirsty, for the football. How will you be able, to feed him? You have a young wide receiving core who, wants the football. I think he does have a positive support system, which I do think it's better than the situation, Wilton, that Carson Wentz came into.
Yeah.
I think Carson Wentz came into some, because of his past play. And even though I don't think it was fully his fault with the Colts and, all of that stuff, I think he came into negative and he kind of lived in that negativity. And I don't think he was ever able to escape it. So all in all, I'll say this is probably the most excited I've seen fans going into a season as of late, just because all that has surrounded the Washington Commanders.
Do you think that, and I'm very excited to see what Eric Bieniemy does, because number one, I'm glad that he landed in DC, but I do feel like he deserved to be looked at for a head coach position.
Oh, for sure.
For where he is now, I definitely think he's going to be very beneficial for Sam Howell. But I want to ask this. With his addition being on the offensive side and knowing where the defense is, for the Commanders, do you think this is a competitive team next year that can make some noise in the NFC?
Yeah, I think the Commanders have made the right moves. I think this is why this year is going to be so critical. Eric Bieniemy took a chance and a bet on this team, right? Because essentially, He added a little bit of a more title, right, to him, to his, to himself. But essentially, he left a team that many could say could go back to the Super Bowl, right, to take a chance on a team that, needs a little bit of work, needs a little bit of fine tuning.
Exactly.
And then also, I think you're looking at a head coach in Ron Rivera, who, going back to her ownership, has to prove himself as well. Ron Rivera has been, he's had decent play, but has been nothing exceptional. But he's also a guy that's overcome adversity. But I think he's been giving some grace. So saying all that to say, when you have a head coach and an offensive coordinator that really have to prove themselves, I think this is going to be a special season for the Commanders, right? Because you have that kind of added pressure, which I think wasn't there before Wilton. And then to your point, I do think this team on paper looks great. But I think it's just going to be the chemistry, gelling, and meshing. And I think let's remember, this was a Commanders team that was a game away from getting into the playoffs, right? Exactly. They had one job. They needed to beat the Cleveland Browns. It did not happen. So I'm saying,
very vividly.
Could this team be competitive in the NFC? I think yes. I think it's going to be largely dependent on the quarterback play. Linebacker play has also been very important to talk about in Washington. That's also something they've been trying to shore up, and some fans feeling like they didn't do enough to. But I do think, if all goes well, if this team can stay healthy, that, I think this is a wild card team that could make some noise. And it's a team that, before, I think when you saw the Commanders coming, a lot of teams probably counted it as a win. But I think now you're going to have to game plan differently because of Eric Bieniemy, who's going to be able to open and create this new offense. I think it's the same thing with Baltimore and the new offensive coordinator there working with Lamar. You're going to have to game plan differently. And then to your point too, I think this defense was able to shore up the secondary. Again, they made the right moves where I think this defense too is going to be something you have to account for. But I think the NFC East will be fun this year to watch. Let's remember, this was an NFC East that was the most competitive last, and this was the best division essentially. The Commanders falling just short, of making this a division that was able to send all teams, right, Wilton, to the playoffs. And again, that was, games, and fans will go back to that game and question some of the, decisions that were made in that game and, feeling like they should have been there. But I would say, again, look out for the Commanders because of the pieces that they did, the needs that they address. And again, the new leadership that we have in Washington.
Before I get you out of here, I want to ask you this, and this kind of shifts away from just the day-to-day sports conversations. I want to ask this. What does it mean to you to be not only a woman, but a Black woman in sports, especially in today's area where, companies are having layoffs. It's harder to get into the industry. These particular jobs are asking us to do more, oftentimes with less. So it's just like,
it's
how
real
do you
out
navigate
here.
that space of being a successful Black woman in sports?
Well, first off, thank you for calling me successful. I am so hard on myself, Wilton. So to me, I'm never doing enough and I could always be doing more. But, as you said, this industry is different now. One, you have, new technology and startup companies, entering the game. So I think there's more opportunities in that sense. But to your point, networks are laying off folks, left and right. And unfortunately, it seems like, we've on social media. It's a scary thing, to see. I think the role of, reporters and is changing, as you said, being asked to do more, with less. And I think also having just to prove your value more, has been a hard thing. But I think for me, what's in my Lord in life is being able to pivot. So like something I did this year was do more baseball coverage, right? So join MLBbro.com and, adding a new facet to my game, being able to pivot, into that. Sports betting, got into that a couple years ago now, right. Being able to pivot into that. I wasn't a gambler, right? But, had to pivot into that. And I think being able to, promote yourself in different ways, like I think now what's also different is before, I think the brand was so much bigger than the people. I think now people have been able to kind of make themselves bigger, than some of the brands like Ari, who we all love in the women's sports space. I think she's a perfect example of that. Like she's been her own brand and, has elevated not just her brand, not just to highlight her, but her own brand and, is in high demand. And I love seeing that. But I want every Black woman to kind of be in that space, and sphere. And I think what I've seen more Black women doing, it's how I kind of started, was making their own thing. I started my podcast, Listening with KNN. I see so many more Black women starting their own companies, their own blogs, their own podcasts, their own media publications. Like I know here in DC, a lot of my fellow Black sisters in media have their own publications that they're actually covering teams with. So essentially not waiting for a seat at the table, but building their own table. And I think that's what so many Black women are starting to do. But I also think, making sure that we fight for inclusion in a lot of spaces. I talked about sports betting. Would love to see more of us there. Talked about baseball. Would love to see more, of us there. I think also
it needs to be more of us.
We need more. And being able to, I think you need to know everything. Like, for me, I've added producer to my title. So knowing how to, put out content and produce content, so kind of being a jack of all trades. But I also think for Black women, what's been helpful is, for me, I've learned to say no, Wilton, to opportunities, or people that don't see my value. And I think that can be hard. Like, when you're trying to build and grow, you think you need to do everything, right? Like, I need to be there. I need to do this. But quite frankly, you can sometimes be lowering your value if people know they don't have to pay you for something or they can pay you less. And I know you have to get in a space when you're comfortable with that. But I think also, too, just having multiple streams of income. So that's why for me, I love being a freelancer, until tax time. And that kind of gets fun and confusing. But it also gives me it's a lot. Ooh, it's a lot. Don't get me started on that. But it's also great because I'm able to, do so many different things, be open to different opportunities. And, just kind of be in the space where I've been able to build my brand in that sense. I think what I love about being a Black woman too, I think I've been able to open new doors for women. So one of the things I love about what I do most is, being part of, like, where I met you, the National Association of Black Journalists and the Sports Task Force, and being able to be co-chair of the mentorship committee, being vice president of the Washington Association of Black Journalists here in D.C., working with so many different orgs and groups to make sure that they're including minority voices. Not just talking about DEI, but what are you doing for DEI? I think for me, that's been the biggest thing too, is that making sure that, I'm lifting as I climb and including others, along the way, having people shadow me and, come out with me and actually learning the ropes, introducing them to the people that they need to know so they can get into this industry, so they can knock down doors. I think that's the biggest thing is, looking out for each other. Because if we don't look out for each other, well, who else will?
What are some of the other projects that you're going to be working on, and where can people follow you to stay connected with you?
Oh my gosh. I feel like there's so much, and it's always so funny. It skips my mind all the time. But first I will tell you where you should follow me, The Real K Nelson, on social media. Come follow, interact with me. I love just talking with people, talk sports. Kelsey Nicole Nelson on LinkedIn and Facebook as well. And check out my website, kelseynicolenelson.com. That's where folks, are able to book me for events and all that kind of fun stuff. And just honestly, if you have questions, a lot of students reach out to me. Come to me in that way. Coming up soon, I'll be dropping a commercial, which I hope everyone checks out, with Grand Central Sportsbook. They're based here in DC in the Adams Morgan area. It's all about betting local and, keeping the dollars in our communities, but also having fun and introducing new people to sports betting. So excited for that to drop, coming very soon. So make sure you stay on my platforms for that. I have a lot more content with MLB Bro coming out. I'll actually have a lot more hosting events that I'll soon be announcing, which I'm honestly super excited about. So I hope everyone follows and gets behind. And then soon, I can't announce it yet, but I'll also be having a new company that I'll be adding to my kind of work base that I'll be doing more coverage for.
Ladies and gentlemen, Kelsey Nicole Nelson. Kelsey, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Wilton, thank you for having me. Anytime you ask, it's an easy yes. You are my D9 brother. You are such a great friend. And again, just amazingly proud of the work that you continue to do. And I just have to say thank you for helping to amplify not just women voices, but Black women voices, and the great work that you do amplifying the WNBA. We need more of you, and I hope you're an inspiration to others to hopefully do more of this work. So thank you, Wilton.